this video today is to show you how to do a steeking crochet through the colour work, and we're going to be cutting through these chains here. There's some single strands as well, but we're going to cut through. This was to show you how different things will work. My preference here is when you're doing it to make your chains so sort of join together. If you're not very happy about doing this, in order to give yourself a little bit more confidence, I recommend getting a chain and just cutting a chain. So this is just in cotton, so this is not going to stick to itself or anything, but the principle still applies, that if you cut one of the threads in the chain like so and then pull it apart, you can see that this top piece, which is the one that you'd think wouldn't knot, does actually knot quite nicely there, and the one at the bottom, which we would expect to knot because that's how we would fasten off things, will knot just like that. Okay, I'll do that again. So here we've got, I think we've only got 4 chains here, so there we go. We're just going to cut in here. Do this a few times until you are comfortable with the process. Okay, so as we come out here, you can see here that that will just literally lock in together and knot. There's not much there. I mean, I've literally got a knot left, and then this side will just pull. So do that a few times, get your confidence up so that you know that when you approach it, you're going to be fine. Now, as for reinforcing the steek, you can either do it before or you can do it after. I recommend after you've done the cutting, because it's then easier, because your piece of work is open, and so it's easier to actually get to things like if you wanted to do like a zigzag line over the edge, that's fine. You can needle felt, which is what I'm going to show you how to do. Or I was thinking about this, you might even just be able to over sew the edges with the wool, because that will stick and felt together as well. So when you're doing your steek, you want to be able to put it flat. Make sure that there is nothing underneath it. You don't want to be cutting the back as well as the front. I'm just going to zoom in. So I've zoomed in a bit closer, and here you can see the tail of the end of the grey. That's fine, because we're going to be fastening that in as we go. And now we're going to cut each of these chains, and you want to be cutting them in the middle and just cut one strand so that you can then pull it apart. So I can't see that terribly clearly from here. Right, one strand, cut and pull it apart. Okay, for some reason that one's not done very well. Okay, so we are going to cut and then pull it apart. So we try and find the central stitch, snip through, and then if you pull that one out, this one should tighten up like so, and this one will tighten up also. Now you can just do all the cuts and then do all the tightening, or you can take it one chain at a time. So you can either do this one chain at a time, so literally we're cutting that, pulling it apart, tighten that side, tighten that side, so that we get a really good one for our show. So we're going to cut through both, pull it apart, pull that one tight, and then pull that one tight. Don't worry about the little knots, we are actually going to cut all this off eventually. Here we go. Cut, pull, tighten, tighten. So actually doing it one at a time is quite satisfying actually. But if you wanted to cut them all then pull tight, then that's fine too. Okay, if it doesn't pull apart, then it's quite possible that you haven't. There you go, see how much easier that is. So we're going to just tighten that one and pull that one. Sometimes it'll be a little bit further away than we want it to be from the edge, but again that really doesn't matter, because when we're finishing off, this edge is going to be enclosed. Here I've done it in a different way, so I've got the chain and I've got the single strand of grey. So the single strand of grey I'm just going to cut in the middle, and then here I'm just going to snip the chain apart, and it will do exactly the same thing. It will tighten around, and it will actually tighten around the grey as we're going. Once we get to the single colour part of the steek, it is a lot easier because we're not looking for lots of different things. So again, we're just going to cut one loop like so, pull it apart, tighten it up on that side, tighten it up on this side. Now we'll see you up at the end. And here we go with the last two, that one there, and the final one. And that's it. Your cardigan has been liberated. So we now have our two steeked edges. What is really important now is that we reinforce these edges. Now you can stitch down with a zigzag. If you stitch down with a zigzag, make sure that you overlap the edge here of your, so you're stitching right, so that you stitch right along this edge so that you overlap where the knots are. So if you're machine sewing, if you haven't got a sticky wool, then do that zigzag stitch over that edge. You could also, I think, go over with the needle, so you could actually do an overhand stitch all the way down the edge as well. That might work, although I haven't tested that one, so I can't guarantee. But the way that I've done it on mine is to needle felt. So right at the edges here, right down here, this edge bit here, basically we just needle felt. Now this is not a fast process. In fact, it's the opposite of fast. It's actually quite slow, and you have to be careful not to prick yourself. But once you've done this bit of felting, little bit of felting, you can see that it starts matting together. I'm going to do a little bit more, and I'm going to start right up here where the edge starts. You only really need to do it in the right in the edge where the knots are, or just before the knots, and just keep doing it up, down, keep pricking it until what you have is a felted edge. And of course, if it's felted, then it can't undo. Simple, simple, simple. Oh, sorry about that. So you can see on the back here, it's kind of gone quite fuzzy already. So what we can do is we can turn it over and do a little bit of felting from the back as well. I'm just doing these first couple of rows just so that you can see how it turns out. It does take a little bit of patience, but we've spent all the time making it, and we've spent all the money on the wool, then we might as well do this lovely little process. Now what happens when you felted it like this, and you can see here how that edge is now felted, that means that those threads are not going anywhere. So I would say I've felted the first 4 there. So when we have finished doing all the needle felting, I wouldn't normally do it this quickly, but when we finish doing all the needle felting, we can actually cut right to the edge like so, so that we have this little felty edge there. Now this is definitely my recommended method. We can then just tidy up that little edge a little bit. This is definitely my recommended method. I can't think of another way that's going to be really easier than this. So we're just going to needle felt that edge, and then eventually as you keep doing it, it will then just kind of disappear into this felted edge. Don't know how close you can see. So you can see that there, that's not going to go anywhere. None of that stitching is going to move. So be brave with cutting and steeking your Catdigan. It's not going to go very far. And then when we get onto the button border, I will show you how we're going to enclose that edge so that we can't actually see it at all. See you then.